The Calm Advantage: How to Stay Calm Under Pressure and Perform at Your Best, published by Midnight Audiobook. Introduction. A few minutes before an important interview, you sit quietly and look at the clock. You have prepared for days. You know your experience. You know your answers. Yet as the moment gets closer, your mind begins to race. What if you forget something important? What if they ask a question you cannot answer? What if this opportunity slips away? Most people know this feeling. It appears before an exam, during a difficult conversation, while waiting for important news, or whenever something meaningful is at stake. Your heart beats a little faster, small doubts grow louder, simple decisions suddenly feel difficult. The pressure is not just around you, it feels like it is happening inside you. What is interesting is that not everyone responds to these moments in the same way. Two people can face the exact same challenge. One becomes overwhelmed by worry and uncertainty. The other stays focused, thinks clearly, and handles the situation with confidence. The difference is not always intelligence, experience, or talent. In many cases, the difference is something much simpler. It is calmness. In today's world, pressure is unavoidable. Deadlines, setbacks, criticism, uncertainty, and difficult decisions are part of life for everyone. No one can completely escape them. The question is not whether pressure will appear. The question is how you will respond when it does. Many people assume that staying calm is a natural gift that only a fortunate few possess. They believe some people are simply born with stronger nerves or better emotional control. But the truth is far more encouraging. Calmness is not a talent. It is a skill. Like any skill, it can be learned, practiced, and strengthened over time. The people who seem calm under pressure are not living easier lives. They have simply learned something that others have not yet discovered. And once you understand that lesson, pressure may never feel the same again. Chapter 1. Why Life Puts You Under Pressure. A surprising thing happens whenever people reach a goal they have been chasing for a long time. They often expect life to become easier. A student imagines that graduation will finally remove the uncertainty that has followed them for years. An employee dreams about earning a promotion and believes that greater success will bring greater peace of mind. Someone spends years building a business, convinced that once it becomes profitable, stress will disappear. New parents prepare for the arrival of a child, imagining that once the baby is finally in their arms, everything will somehow fall into place. Yet reality rarely unfolds that way. Soon after entering a new chapter, fresh responsibilities begin to appear. The graduate now faces career decisions. The newly promoted manager becomes responsible for a team. The business owner discovers that success creates bigger expectations than failure ever did. The parent quickly realizes that love and responsibility arrive together. The old pressures disappear, but new pressures take their place. For many people, this creates confusion. They begin to wonder why life never seems to become completely free from pressure. They work hard, solve problems, achieve goals, and overcome obstacles, only to find that another challenge is waiting around the corner. It can feel as though something has gone wrong. But perhaps nothing has gone wrong at all. Perhaps the problem is not pressure itself. Perhaps the problem is the way we have been taught to think about it. Many people grow up believing that pressure is a warning sign. When they feel stressed, uncertain, or challenged, they assume something is wrong with their situation. They imagine that successful people must live with less pressure. They believe that happiness means reaching a point where difficult decisions disappear, uncertainty fades away, and life becomes comfortable and predictable. Yet when you look closely at the lives of people who are growing, building, creating, leading, and pursuing meaningful goals, you discover something unexpected. Pressure is everywhere. It appears before important conversations because relationships matter. It appears before major decisions because the outcome matters. It appears when opportunities arrive because opportunities carry risk. It appears during periods of growth, because growth requires change. Pressure is often not evidence that you are on the wrong path. In many cases, it is evidence that you are standing at a moment that matters. Think about the experiences that shape a person's life. Starting a new job, moving to a new city, building a family, launching a business, taking on leadership responsibilities, learning a difficult skill, pursuing a dream that has no guarantees. None of these experiences come with complete certainty. Each one asks something of us. Each one stretches us beyond what feels comfortable, and because they matter, they naturally create pressure. This becomes easier to understand when we look at other areas of life. Consider sports. Every athlete wants to improve, but improvement requires challenge. Muscles become stronger because they are pushed beyond their current limits. Endurance increases because the body is asked to do more than it could do before. The discomfort is not separate from growth, it is part of the process. The same principle appears in business. An entrepreneur who wants to build something valuable must make decisions without knowing exactly how they will turn out. There are risks to take, problems to solve, and responsibilities to carry. Success is rewarding, but it is rarely comfortable. Education follows a similar pattern. Students grow by confronting subjects they do not yet understand. They face exams, deadlines, and expectations. Learning itself often feels uncomfortable because it requires moving from confusion toward clarity. Relationships are no different. Deep connections require vulnerability. Difficult conversations must sometimes be held. Conflicts need to be addressed. Trust takes time to build. The strongest relationships are not the ones that avoid pressure altogether. They are the ones that grow through it. Even personal happiness creates its own form of pressure. This may sound strange at first, but consider what is required for meaningful change. Someone who wants a healthier lifestyle must break old habits. Someone who wants greater confidence must face situations that feel uncomfortable. Someone who wants a better future must often leave behind familiar patterns that no longer serve them. In every case, progress asks us to step into uncertainty. This is why a life completely free from pressure is not necessarily a life filled with fulfillment. A life without pressure might also be a life without challenge, growth, ambition, or meaningful change. It might feel safe, but it would also feel limited. Many people spend years trying to eliminate pressure when the real opportunity is to understand it differently. Imagine a person standing at the edge of a new opportunity. They feel nervous. Their thoughts race. They question whether they are ready. Their first instinct may be to interpret those feelings as evidence that they should turn back. But what if those feelings are simply signs that they are stepping into unfamiliar territory? What if pressure is not a signal to retreat? What if it is a signal that life is inviting them to grow? The truth is that every worthwhile achievement contains an element of uncertainty. Every meaningful goal asks us to leave something familiar behind. Every significant chapter of life demands more from us than the chapter before it. That demand often arrives in the form of pressure. The people who build successful careers feel it. The people who create strong relationships feel it. The people who become leaders feel it. The people who continue growing long after others have settled feel it. Pressure is not reserved for a few unfortunate individuals. It is woven into the experience of being fully engaged with life. Once you begin to see pressure this way, something important changes. Instead of viewing it as proof that something is wrong, you begin to recognize it as part of the price of progress. You stop expecting life to become completely free from challenge and start understanding that challenge is often what moves life forward. And perhaps that is the most important realization of all. The pressure you feel today may not be an obstacle standing between you and your future. It may be life's way of preparing you for the person you are becoming and the next level you are meant to reach. Chapter 2. Why most people break when things get hard. Imagine checking your phone and seeing a message that says, "We need to talk when you have a moment." There is no explanation, no details, just a short sentence. Within seconds, your mind begins to fill in the blanks. Maybe something is wrong. Maybe someone is upset. Maybe bad news is coming. The conversation has not even happened yet, but your emotions have already started reacting to possibilities that exist only in your imagination. This is a remarkably common human experience. Most of us have lived through moments when uncertainty entered our lives and our minds immediately rushed to the worst possible conclusion. A manager asks to speak with us privately, and we wonder if our job is at risk. We submit an important application and assume rejection before receiving a response. A friend becomes unusually quiet, and we begin questioning the relationship. A small problem appears, and we mentally transform it into a disaster. What makes these situations so interesting is that the suffering often begins long before the actual outcome arrives. The mind dislikes uncertainty. When we do not know what will happen next, we naturally search for answers. We try to predict the future. We attempt to prepare ourselves for every possible outcome. Unfortunately, the mind often mistakes pessimism for preparation. Instead of asking what is most likely to happen, it starts asking what is the worst thing that could happen. And once that process begins, fear grows quickly. Consider the experience of preparing for a job interview. The interview itself may last only 30 minutes, but some people spend days imagining everything that could go wrong. They picture themselves forgetting answers, saying something embarrassing, or failing to impress the interviewer. By the time the interview arrives, they have already lived through dozens of imaginary failures. The same thing happens with public speaking. A person stands before a group and worries that everyone will judge them. They imagine making mistakes, losing their train of thought, or appearing nervous. Yet if they actually watch other speakers, they will notice something surprising. Most audiences are far less critical than the speaker imagines. The fear comes not from what is happening. The fear comes from what the mind predicts might happen. This pattern extends far beyond work and performance. In relationships, people often worry about conversations that have not happened yet. They replay messages, analyze facial expressions, and search for hidden meanings in ordinary interactions. A delayed response to a text message can create stories that have little connection to reality. Someone begins thinking, "Maybe they are upset with me." A few minutes later, the story grows. "Maybe I said something wrong." Then it becomes larger still. "Maybe this relationship is changing." Hours of emotional stress can be created by a narrative that exists entirely inside the mind. Career setbacks create similar reactions. A missed opportunity, a rejected proposal, or a disappointing result can quickly lead to broad conclusions about the future. One event becomes evidence that nothing will work out. One setback becomes proof of permanent failure. Yet when people look back years later, they often realize that many of the things they feared never happened. The mind treated possibilities as certainties. One reason this happens is that uncertainty often feels more uncomfortable than reality itself. When reality arrives, we can respond to it. We can make decisions. We can adapt. We can move forward. Uncertainty offers none of those comforts. It leaves the door open to endless possibilities, and the mind frequently chooses the darkest ones. Think about waiting for medical test results, hearing back from an employer, or waiting for an important decision that affects your future. The waiting period often feels harder than the moment when the answer finally arrives. Even difficult news can sometimes feel easier than endless uncertainty because at least reality gives us something solid to work with. This tendency explains why many people struggle under pressure. They are not only dealing with the challenge in front of them, they are also dealing with dozens of imagined futures created by their own thoughts. Fear of failure adds another layer to the problem. Many people avoid opportunities because they are afraid of what failure might say about them. They worry that a mistake will expose weakness, damage their reputation, or prove they are not capable enough. The possibility of failure becomes so uncomfortable that they stop taking action altogether. Fear of rejection operates in much the same way. People hesitate to apply for opportunities, share ideas, start relationships, or pursue goals because rejection feels personal. Yet rejection is often simply information. It is a single outcome, not a final judgment on someone's worth. Fear of embarrassment can be equally powerful. Many dreams remain unrealized because people are worried about looking foolish. They imagine others criticizing them, laughing at them, or judging their efforts. Yet most people are far too focused on their own lives to spend much time analyzing someone else's mistakes. Perhaps the deepest fear of all is the fear of losing control. Human beings like certainty. We like knowing what comes next. We prefer predictable outcomes and clear answers. Pressure threatens that sense of control. It reminds us that the future cannot be fully managed. For many people, that realization feels frightening. Yet there is an important truth hidden beneath all of these experiences. The event itself is often only part of the struggle. The larger struggle is the interpretation. Two people can face the same challenge and experience completely different levels of suffering. One sees uncertainty and immediately imagines disaster. The other sees uncertainty and recognizes that the outcome is still unknown. The situation may be identical. The story surrounding the situation is different. This is why pressure alone rarely breaks people. An upcoming presentation, a difficult conversation, a career setback, or an uncertain future does not automatically create overwhelming suffering. What often creates suffering is the meaning we attach to those experiences. It is the assumptions we make, the conclusions we jump to, and the fears we allow to grow unchecked. The mind is constantly creating stories. Some of those stories give us courage, perspective, and strength. Others create fear long before reality gives us a reason for it. The challenge is not that pressure exists. Pressure is part of life. The challenge is learning to recognize when our thoughts are adding weight that reality has not yet placed on our shoulders. Because in the end, the mind is never a neutral observer. It is always helping to shape the experience. And depending on the story it chooses to tell, it can become either your greatest ally or your greatest obstacle. Chapter 3. The Hidden Power of Staying Calm. Two people sit in the same conference room, waiting to deliver an important presentation. Both have prepared for weeks. Both know the material. Both understand what is at stake. A successful presentation could lead to a promotion, greater responsibility, and new opportunities. As the meeting begins, an unexpected problem appears. The presentation software freezes. Several slides fail to load. Important information is suddenly unavailable. One person immediately panics. Their thoughts begin racing. They become frustrated, distracted, and focused on everything that is going wrong. Their voice loses confidence. Small mistakes begin turning into larger ones. The pressure of the situation gradually takes control of their performance. The other person experiences the same problem, but responds differently. They acknowledge the issue, take a moment to gather their thoughts, and continue speaking. Instead of focusing on the problem, they focus on the next step. Their attention remains on the audience, the message, and the goal. The challenge is identical. The outcome is not. What separates these two people is not intelligence, talent, or preparation. It is the ability to remain calm when circumstances become difficult. This ability creates one of the most powerful advantages a person can possess. When most people think about success, they often focus on knowledge, skills, experience, or hard work. All of these matter, yet there is another quality that quietly influences nearly every important moment in life: calmness. The reason calmness matters so much is simple. Pressure affects everyone. Problems appear without warning. Plans change. Mistakes happen. Unexpected obstacles emerge. No amount of preparation can remove uncertainty from life. What often determines the outcome is not the challenge itself, but the way a person responds when the challenge arrives. This is why calm people frequently appear more capable than others, even when their abilities are similar. A calm person can think while others are reacting. A calm person can listen while others are arguing. A calm person can focus while others are distracted by emotion. In many situations, that difference becomes a significant advantage. Consider leadership. During difficult times, people naturally look toward those around them for guidance. Employees watch their managers, families watch parents, teams watch coaches, communities watch leaders. When uncertainty rises, emotional reactions spread quickly. Anxiety can move through a group almost as rapidly as confidence. Imagine two leaders facing the same crisis. One becomes visibly overwhelmed, constantly changing direction and reacting emotionally to every new problem. The people around them begin to lose confidence. The other remains composed. They do not pretend the situation is easy. They do not ignore the challenges. They simply remain steady. Their calmness provides reassurance. Their ability to think clearly helps others think clearly as well. People trust those who remain stable when circumstances become unstable. The same principle appears in business. Successful business owners often face setbacks, unexpected costs, market changes, and difficult decisions. The difference between success and failure is not always the absence of problems. More often, it is the ability to respond intelligently when problems appear. A calm business owner can evaluate options instead of reacting impulsively. They can separate temporary difficulties from long-term realities. They can make decisions based on facts rather than fear. Sports provide another powerful example. The final moments of an important game often place athletes under enormous pressure. Crowds are watching, expectations are high. One decision can change the outcome. Yet the athletes who perform best in these moments are rarely the ones experiencing no pressure. They are usually the ones who remain composed despite the pressure. Their hearts may be racing. Their bodies may feel tense, but they stay focused on what needs to be done, rather than becoming consumed by what could go wrong. The same pattern appears in medicine and emergency situations. When unexpected complications arise during a medical procedure, patients benefit from professionals who remain calm and focused. During emergencies, people naturally look toward those who can think clearly rather than react emotionally. Calmness does not eliminate the difficulty of the situation. It allows people to navigate the difficulty more effectively. This is why calmness is often misunderstood. Many people mistakenly associate calmness with passivity. They assume calm people care less, feel less, or lack ambition. Some even believe that emotional intensity is a sign of strength. In reality, the opposite is often true. Anyone can react emotionally when circumstances become difficult. Anyone can become frustrated, angry, fearful, or overwhelmed. Remaining steady requires far more strength. True calmness is not the absence of emotion. Calm people experience fear, disappointment, uncertainty, and stress, just like everyone else. The difference is that they do not immediately surrender control to those emotions. They feel what they feel without allowing those feelings to dictate every action. That is strength. Imagine someone receiving criticism at work. One person reacts defensively, argues, and allows frustration to take over the conversation. Another listens carefully, evaluates the feedback, and responds thoughtfully. Which person is more likely to learn? Which person is more likely to earn respect? Which person is more likely to improve? The answer becomes obvious. Calmness improves communication, because it creates space between an event and a reaction. It allows people to hear what is being said, rather than immediately preparing a defense. It improves relationships because trust grows around people who respond consistently, rather than unpredictably. It improves confidence because confidence is built on the belief that you can handle challenges when they arise. A calm person trusts their ability to face uncertainty without falling apart. It improves performance because energy that would otherwise be spent on panic can be directed toward solving problems. Perhaps this is why some of the most impressive people are not always the loudest, fastest, or most dramatic. They are often the individuals who remain centered when everyone else is losing balance. Their calmness becomes a source of clarity. Their steadiness becomes a source of strength. Their presence becomes a source of confidence for others. The greatest advantage of calmness is not that it removes pressure from life. Pressure will always exist. Challenges will continue to appear. Uncertainty will remain part of every meaningful journey. The advantage is that calmness allows you to meet those realities without being controlled by them. And that is an important distinction, because calmness is not the absence of pressure. It is the ability to remain steady within it. Chapter 4. The moment that changes everything. Imagine receiving an email that contains criticism you were not expecting. Perhaps it comes from your manager, a client, a colleague, or someone whose opinion matters to you. The moment you read the message, you feel something change inside you. Your heart beats a little faster, your stomach tightens, thoughts begin rushing through your mind. You feel misunderstood, you feel frustrated. Part of you wants to respond immediately and defend yourself. At that moment, it feels as though the criticism is controlling your emotions. It feels as though your reaction is automatic. Yet something important is happening beneath the surface. Before you send a reply, before you speak, before you make a decision, there is a brief moment that most people never notice. It is a small space between what happened and what you choose to do next. That space may last only a few seconds, but it has the power to change everything. Most people move through life so quickly that they rarely notice this moment. An event occurs, an emotion appears, and a reaction follows. Someone says something offensive, and they immediately respond with anger. A setback occurs, and they immediately become discouraged. A disagreement begins, and they instantly become defensive. Because the process happens so fast, it often feels as though there was never a choice involved. Yet when people look back on some of their biggest regrets, they often discover that the problem was not the event itself. The problem was what they chose to do immediately afterward. Think about an argument between two people who care about each other. The disagreement may begin with something small, a misunderstanding, an insensitive comment, or a moment of frustration creates tension. One person reacts emotionally, the other person reacts emotionally in return. Within minutes, the conversation shifts away from the original issue and becomes a battle of hurt feelings and impulsive words. Later, when emotions settle, both people often wish they had responded differently. The same pattern appears in workplaces every day. A manager receives criticism and becomes defensive instead of curious. An employee feels overlooked and reacts with resentment rather than communication. A minor disagreement grows into a major conflict because neither person paused long enough to think clearly about their response. What could have been resolved in minutes sometimes creates tension that lasts for months. Social media provides another example. A person reads a comment that feels insulting or unfair. Instantly they feel anger rising. Within seconds they write a response. One comment becomes another. More people join the discussion. The situation grows larger than it ever needed to become. What is interesting is that if the same person had waited even a few minutes before replying, they might have chosen entirely different words. They might have decided the comment was not worth their energy at all. These situations reveal an important truth. Many of the difficulties people experience are not caused by events alone. They are caused by reactions that happen before reflection has a chance to occur. This does not mean emotions are the enemy. Emotions serve an important purpose. They alert us to what matters. They help us recognize danger, disappointment, excitement, and opportunity. Without emotions, life would lose much of its meaning. The problem begins when emotions become our only guide. Feelings are valuable sources of information, but they are not always reliable sources of direction. Consider someone who applies for a job they truly want and receives a rejection. The disappointment is real. No amount of positive thinking can erase that fact. Yet what happens next often matters more than the rejection itself. One person immediately concludes that they are not talented enough, not qualified enough, or not capable enough. They begin creating a story about failure. Another person experiences the same disappointment, but interprets it differently. They see it as a setback rather than a verdict. The event is identical, the response is not. The same principle applies to almost every challenge in life. A difficult conversation can either strengthen a relationship or damage it. A mistake can become a lesson or a source of shame. Criticism can become useful feedback or a reason for resentment. The outcome is often influenced less by the event itself and more by the response that follows. This is why emotional freedom begins with awareness. The moment a person realizes they have a choice, everything starts to change. They begin to understand that they are not simply passengers being carried wherever their emotions decide to go. They are participants in the process. They may not control every situation they encounter, but they can influence how they respond to those situations. What makes this realization so powerful is that it applies to everyone. It is not reserved for experts, leaders, or naturally calm individuals. Every person possesses this ability. Most have simply never learned to recognize it. They have spent years reacting automatically, without realizing there was another option available. Think about the people you admire most. They are not necessarily the people who never experience frustration, disappointment, or anger. More often, they are the people who have learned not to let those emotions control every decision. They feel the same emotions as everyone else, but they create enough space to choose their response, rather than becoming trapped by their first impulse. That small pause may seem insignificant, but it influences countless areas of life. It affects conversations, relationships, careers, opportunities, and personal growth. A thoughtful response can preserve trust. A patient response can prevent unnecessary conflict. A calm response can transform a setback into a valuable lesson. Life will continue to bring criticism, disappointment, rejection, uncertainty, and stress. None of those experiences can be avoided completely. What can change is the way we meet them. Hidden within every challenge is a brief moment that most people overlook. It is the moment between stimulus and response, between emotion and action, between impulse and choice. Once you begin to notice that moment, you discover something remarkable. The power to shape your life has been there all along. It has been waiting quietly inside the space between what happens to you and what you decide to do next. And more often than most people realize, the quality of a person's life is determined by what they choose to do in that space. Chapter 5. How to quiet a chaotic mind. Few experiences are more frustrating than wanting to rest while your mind refuses to cooperate. The day is over. The responsibilities have been handled. The conversations have ended. Yet as soon as the outside world becomes quiet, the activity inside your mind seems to grow louder. A conversation from earlier in the day suddenly returns. You begin wondering whether you said the right thing. Then your attention shifts to a decision you need to make next week. Before long, you are thinking about a financial concern, a personal goal, or a problem that has not even happened yet. Nothing urgent is taking place in the present moment, yet your mind behaves as though it has been handed a list of problems that must be solved immediately. Most people have experienced this at some point. In fact, many spend a significant portion of their lives caught in an endless stream of thoughts, worries, predictions, and mental rehearsals. What makes this experience so difficult is that it often feels productive. When we are thinking intensely about a problem, we naturally assume we are making progress. We tell ourselves that if we analyze the situation carefully enough, we will eventually arrive at certainty, clarity, or control. But there is an important difference between productive thinking and repetitive thinking. Productive thinking helps us understand a situation, make a decision, or take action. Repetitive thinking circles the same problem again and again without moving closer to a solution. One creates clarity, the other creates exhaustion. Consider someone waiting to hear back after an important job interview. At first it seems reasonable to think about the outcome. The opportunity matters, and naturally they want to know what happens next. But as the days pass, their mind begins constructing possibilities. Perhaps they performed poorly. Perhaps someone else was more qualified. Perhaps they should have answered a question differently. Hours are spent revisiting a conversation that can no longer be changed. What is interesting is that none of this thinking influences the final decision. The interview is already over. The outcome has not yet arrived. Yet the mind continues working as if more analysis will somehow provide certainty before certainty becomes available. This reveals one of the mind's most persistent habits. It struggles with uncertainty. Human beings naturally prefer clear answers. We like knowing where we stand, what comes next, and how situations will unfold. When those answers are unavailable, the mind often attempts to fill the gap. It creates predictions, assumptions, and stories designed to reduce uncertainty. Unfortunately, those stories are not always accurate. Imagine sending an important message and not receiving a response for several hours. The lack of information creates an empty space, and the mind quickly begins filling it. Perhaps the other person is upset. Perhaps something went wrong. Perhaps the relationship is changing. By the time a simple reply finally arrives, an entire narrative may have been created around a situation that never existed. The challenge is not that the mind thinks. The challenge is that the mind often treats its own assumptions as facts. This tendency becomes even more obvious when we look at the way people relate to the past. Many individuals carry old conversations, mistakes, and disappointments with them for years. A missed opportunity from the past can continue occupying mental space long after its practical significance has disappeared. A person may replay a conversation dozens of times, imagining what they should have said or done differently, yet no amount of replaying changes the outcome. The event is over, but the mind continues revisiting it as though another review might finally produce a different ending. At the same time, the mind frequently travels into the future. It predicts problems before they appear, imagines failures before they occur, and creates difficulties that exist only as possibilities. A presentation becomes a disaster before it begins. A challenge becomes overwhelming before it arrives. A setback becomes permanent before any evidence supports that conclusion. As a result, many people spend large portions of their lives reacting emotionally to situations that are not actually happening. They are responding not to reality, but to their interpretation of reality. This is where an important shift begins. The goal is not to eliminate thinking. Thought is one of the most valuable abilities human beings possess. It allows us to learn, create, plan, solve problems, and build meaningful lives. The goal is to develop a healthier relationship with our thoughts. Imagine standing beside a busy road and watching cars pass by. Some vehicles deserve your attention because they contain something important. Most simply continue down the road without requiring any action from you. Thoughts are often similar. Every day, the mind generates countless ideas, worries, memories, observations, fears, and possibilities. Some deserve consideration. Others are little more than mental background noise. The challenge is that many people treat every thought as equally important. Every worry receives attention. Every fear is treated as a prediction. Every negative possibility is examined as though it demands an immediate response. Over time, this habit creates mental clutter. Wisdom, however, is not measured by how much a person thinks. It is often measured by how well they distinguish between useful thoughts and unnecessary ones. This is one of the qualities that separates calm people from everyone else. Many assume calm individuals possess unusually peaceful minds. They imagine that calm people rarely experience doubt, worry, or uncertainty. The truth is far more encouraging. Calm people are not necessarily thinking less. They are simply less controlled by what they think. They experience the same fears, concerns, and uncertainties that everyone else experiences. The difference is that they do not automatically believe every thought that enters their minds. They understand that a thought is not a fact, a fear is not a prediction, a worry is not a certainty. Because of this, they spend less energy fighting every mental battle that appears before them. They become more selective about where they direct their attention. Instead of giving equal importance to every passing thought, they learn to focus on the ones that genuinely deserve consideration. There is something deeply freeing about this realization. It means that peace does not require a perfectly quiet mind. It does not require the elimination of uncertainty, doubt, or occasional worry. It simply requires the ability to see thoughts for what they are, temporary mental events that come and go. Some thoughts offer guidance, some offer perspective, some deserve action, many do not. And often, the first step toward a calmer mind is not learning how to think more effectively. It is learning that you do not have to believe everything your mind tells you, because peace often begins the moment you stop treating every thought as the truth. Chapter 6. Turning emotions into allies. A person spends weeks preparing for an important presentation at work. They invest time, energy, and attention into every detail. When the day finally arrives, the presentation goes reasonably well, but afterward a colleague offers unexpected criticism. The feedback is not harsh, yet something inside immediately reacts. Frustration appears. Defensiveness follows close behind. Within moments, the person's attention shifts away from everything that went right and becomes completely focused on the criticism. For the rest of the day, the comment continues replaying in their mind. They begin questioning themselves. They imagine what they should have said in response. The emotion starts influencing their thoughts, their mood, and even the way they interact with others. What began as a single comment slowly grows into a much larger experience. Most people recognize this pattern because they have lived through it themselves. It might not be criticism. It could be anxiety before an important meeting, disappointment after a missed opportunity, jealousy when comparing themselves to someone else, or fear while facing an uncertain future. The specific emotion changes, but the experience remains familiar. A feeling appears, and suddenly it seems to color everything we think, see, and do. Because difficult emotions can feel uncomfortable, many people spend years trying to eliminate them. They view fear as a weakness, frustration as a problem, anxiety as a flaw, and disappointment as something that should be avoided. They believe emotional strength means always feeling calm, confident, positive, and in control. Yet life has a way of proving otherwise. No matter how successful, experienced, or emotionally mature a person becomes, difficult emotions still appear. They are part of being human. The goal is not to eliminate them. The goal is to understand them. One of the most important shifts a person can make is realizing that emotions are not enemies. They are messages. Like any message, they can be useful when interpreted correctly and misleading when misunderstood. The problem is not that emotions exist. The problem is that many people either ignore them completely or allow them to take complete control. Neither approach leads to wisdom. Consider fear. Few emotions have a worse reputation. People often speak about fear as though it is something that should never be experienced. Yet fear serves an important purpose. Imagine preparing to give a speech in front of hundreds of people. Fear appears because the situation matters to you. You care about performing well. You care about the outcome. In many cases, fear is not telling you to quit. It is reminding you to prepare. Without fear, people might become careless. They might ignore important risks or fail to take challenges seriously. Fear is not always a sign that something is wrong. Sometimes it is simply a sign that something matters. The same principle applies to frustration. A parent becomes frustrated when a child ignores instructions. An employee becomes frustrated when a project falls behind schedule. A person becomes frustrated when reality fails to match expectations. When viewed this way, frustration often reveals a gap between what we expected and what actually happened. The emotion itself is not the problem. It is providing information. It is highlighting something that deserves attention. Disappointment offers another example. Most people dislike disappointment because it hurts. It reminds us that life does not always unfold according to plan. Yet disappointment also reveals something valuable. We only feel disappointed when we care about an outcome. A missed opportunity hurts because it mattered. A failed goal hurts because it was important. A broken relationship hurts because it meant something to us. If disappointment appears, it often points towards something we genuinely value. Hidden within the emotion is a reminder of what matters most. Even anxiety, which so many people struggle against, frequently follows a similar pattern. Anxiety often appears when we are facing uncertainty about something important. A student waiting for exam results, an entrepreneur launching a new business, or a person preparing for a major life change may all experience anxiety. The emotion is uncomfortable, but its presence often reflects significance rather than danger. The mind becomes alert because the outcome feels meaningful. Understanding emotions in this way changes the relationship we have with them. Instead of asking, "How do I get rid of this feeling?" a more useful question becomes, "What is this feeling trying to tell me?" This does not mean every emotion should be obeyed. That distinction is essential. There is a difference between feeling an emotion and becoming controlled by it. A person can feel angry without speaking words they later regret. A person can feel afraid without abandoning an important opportunity. A person can feel anxious without allowing anxiety to make every decision on their behalf. Emotion and action are not the same thing. Unfortunately, many people treat them as though they are inseparable. They assume that because they feel something, they must immediately act on it. Anger demands a reaction. Fear demands avoidance. Frustration demands resistance. Yet emotional maturity begins when a person realizes that feelings can be acknowledged without being obeyed. Think about someone you admire for their emotional strength. Chances are they are not emotionless. They are not immune to disappointment, fear, frustration, or anxiety. In fact, they probably experience those emotions just as often as anyone else. The difference is that they have learned to create space between what they feel and what they do. They listen to their emotions without surrendering control to them. They recognize fear without letting it dictate every decision. They acknowledge frustration without allowing it to damage relationships. They experience disappointment without allowing it to define their future. This creates a tremendous sense of freedom. Many people exhaust themselves trying to maintain a constant state of confidence, positivity, or calm. They believe something is wrong whenever a difficult emotion appears. As a result, they fight against feelings that are simply part of the human experience. The truth is far more reassuring. You do not need to feel confident all the time to move forward. You do not need to eliminate fear before taking action. You do not need to avoid disappointment in order to pursue meaningful goals. Emotional strength is not measured by the absence of difficult feelings. It is measured by the ability to experience those feelings without becoming trapped by them. Once you understand this, emotions begin to feel less like obstacles and more like guides. They still arrive. They still carry intensity. But instead of viewing them as enemies, you begin viewing them as sources of information. Some messages require attention. Some require perspective. All require awareness. And perhaps that is the most liberating realization of all. Emotional strength does not come from suppressing what you feel, denying what you feel, or pretending difficult emotions do not exist. True emotional strength comes from learning how to listen to your emotions carefully without handing them control of your life. Chapter 7. When everything goes wrong. There are moments in life when a carefully built plan collapses without warning. One phone call, one email, one conversation, or one unexpected event can instantly change the direction of a person's future. A promotion that seemed certain goes to someone else. A business opportunity disappears at the last minute. A relationship that felt secure suddenly ends. A goal that required years of effort falls apart just when success seemed close. In those moments, the disappointment can feel overwhelming. It is not only the loss itself that hurts, it is the loss of the future we imagined. Long before events happen, people begin creating pictures of what life will look like when things go according to plan. They imagine the opportunities that will follow, the happiness they will feel, and the problems that will finally disappear. When reality moves in a different direction, it can feel as though that future has been taken away. What makes setbacks especially difficult is that they rarely arrive with perspective, they arrive with emotion. A person who loses an important opportunity does not immediately see future possibilities, they see what has been lost. Someone going through a painful breakup does not instantly recognize lessons or growth. They feel sadness, confusion, and disappointment. An entrepreneur whose business struggles does not naturally focus on long-term development. They focus on the immediate challenges standing in front of them. This is completely human. One of the biggest mistakes people make when discussing adversity is pretending that difficult experiences should not hurt. Failure hurts. Rejection hurts. Loss hurts. Disappointment hurts. There is nothing unusual or weak about feeling those emotions. In fact, the pain often reflects how much something mattered. The challenge is that painful moments have a way of distorting perspective. They convince us that the present situation represents the entire future. A setback that exists today begins to feel permanent. A temporary difficulty starts looking like a final destination. Most people can remember a moment when they believed something was ruined forever, only to discover later that life had continued moving forward. At the time, however, that future was impossible to see. This is one reason adversity affects people so differently. Two individuals can experience similar disappointments and emerge with entirely different outcomes. One becomes trapped by the experience. They replay the event repeatedly, grow resentful, and begin viewing future opportunities through the lens of past failures. The setback becomes part of their identity. Instead of seeing it as something that happened, they begin seeing it as evidence of who they are. The other person feels the same disappointment, but gradually chooses a different path. They learn from the experience, they adapt, they adjust their expectations, and continue moving forward. The setback remains part of their story, but it does not become the entire story. The difference is not that one person avoided pain while the other suffered. Both suffered. The difference lies in what happened after the suffering. History provides countless examples of people whose greatest achievements were shaped by earlier disappointments. Business leaders often speak about failed ventures that taught them lessons success never could. Athletes frequently describe losses that forced them to improve weaknesses they had previously ignored. Writers, artists, and creators regularly encounter rejection before finding recognition. What is interesting is that these experiences rarely feel valuable while they are happening. In the moment, they simply feel painful. A runner who loses an important race feels disappointment, not gratitude. An entrepreneur watching a project fail feels frustration, not excitement about future lessons. Growth is often recognized in hindsight. During the experience itself, all we see is the challenge. This is why resilience cannot be developed in theory. No book, course, or piece of advice can create resilience on its own. Resilience develops through experience. It grows every time a person faces difficulty and discovers they can continue. It grows every time life fails to follow the expected script, and they learn how to adapt. Many people assume confidence comes from success. They believe confident individuals are simply people who have experienced enough positive outcomes to feel secure. But some of the deepest forms of confidence are built differently. Real confidence often develops when people survive situations they once believed they could not survive. Someone who has rebuilt after financial hardship carries a different kind of confidence than someone who has never faced uncertainty. Someone who has recovered from heartbreak understands their own strength in a way they could not have understood before. Someone who has failed publicly and continued moving forward learns that embarrassment, while uncomfortable, is not the end of the world. These experiences teach lessons that comfort never can. Comfort tells us life is manageable when everything goes according to plan. Experience teaches us that we can remain capable even when plans fall apart. That distinction changes everything. When people begin viewing challenges through this lens, setbacks start to look different. They are no longer seen solely as interruptions to progress. They become part of the process of becoming stronger, wiser, and more adaptable. This does not mean every setback contains an obvious blessing. Some losses remain painful. Some disappointments leave lasting scars. Some chapters of life are genuinely difficult. A realistic view of resilience acknowledges this truth rather than pretending otherwise. Yet even within those realities, another truth exists. Human beings are remarkably adaptable. Again and again, people face situations they never wanted, circumstances they never expected, and challenges they never felt prepared for. Somehow they adjust, they learn, they continue. What once seemed impossible gradually becomes manageable. What once felt overwhelming eventually becomes part of their story. This ability to adapt is one of the greatest sources of strength any person possesses. Often we do not recognize that strength until it is tested. The irony of adversity is that it frequently reveals qualities we did not know we had. Patience appears when circumstances demand it. Courage appears when fear is present. Wisdom develops through mistakes. Resilience emerges through challenges. These qualities cannot be purchased, borrowed, or inherited. They are built through experience. That is why some of the strongest people are not those who avoided difficulty. They are those who encountered difficulty and discovered they were capable of more than they imagined. When everything is going well, it is easy to feel confident about life. The true test comes when plans unravel, expectations collapse, and certainty disappears. Those moments reveal not only what we are facing, but also who we are becoming. And sometimes, the experiences that look like defeat in the present become the very experiences that build the strength, wisdom, and resilience that shape the future. Some of life's greatest strengths are forged in moments that, at the time, looked like failure. Chapter 8. The Art of Staying Steady Around Difficult People. Most people have experienced a moment when a single person managed to affect their entire day. Perhaps it was a coworker who seemed to criticize everything you did. Maybe it was a family member who always found something negative to say. It could have been an angry customer, a controlling friend, or even a stranger on social media who left a comment that lingered in your mind long after you read it. Imagine arriving at work in a good mood. The morning begins smoothly. You feel focused, productive, and optimistic. Then a colleague makes a sarcastic remark during a meeting. The comment is brief, but it catches your attention. Hours later, you are still thinking about it. You replay the conversation in your mind. You imagine what you should have said. You feel frustrated every time the memory returns. By the time the day ends, that single interaction has occupied far more space in your mind than it ever deserved. What makes situations like this so frustrating is that the difficult person often goes on with their day completely unaffected, while we continue carrying the emotional weight of the encounter. This reveals an important truth about emotional well-being. Many people do not lose their peace because of major life events. They lose it because of other people. A critical comment, a disrespectful tone, a negative attitude, an unfair accusation, a piece of gossip, a disagreement. These experiences may seem small, yet they can trigger surprisingly strong emotional reactions. One moment we feel calm and centered. The next moment we feel irritated, defensive, discouraged, or angry. The reason is simple. Human beings are social creatures. We naturally care about how we are treated, how we are perceived, and how we fit within the groups around us. Criticism can feel personal. Rejection can feel painful. Disrespect can feel threatening. As a result, other people's behavior often affects us more deeply than we realize. Yet one of the most important lessons in emotional maturity is understanding that difficult people are a permanent part of life. Every workplace contains challenging personalities. Every family has disagreements. Every friendship experiences misunderstandings. Every community includes individuals who are negative, argumentative, controlling, or emotionally reactive. Even the internet provides endless opportunities to encounter opinions that provoke frustration. Many people spend years hoping these individuals will change. They imagine life will become easier once certain people become more reasonable, more understanding, or more considerate. Unfortunately, this strategy rarely works. The reality is that we have limited control over other people's behavior. We cannot force someone to become less critical. We cannot guarantee that others will always be respectful. We cannot prevent every conflict or misunderstanding. What we can influence is the amount of control we allow those people to have over our emotional state. This is where emotionally strong people begin to think differently. They understand that another person's behavior belongs to that person. Their words, attitudes, choices, and reactions are reflections of their own thoughts, experiences, and emotional condition. While those behaviors may affect us, they do not have to define our response. Consider criticism. Many people automatically treat criticism as a personal attack. They become defensive before considering whether the criticism contains anything useful. Emotionally mature individuals approach it differently. They recognize that some criticism deserves attention, while some deserves very little at all. Not every opinion is equally valuable. A thoughtful piece of feedback from someone you respect may deserve serious consideration. A negative comment from someone who knows nothing about your situation may deserve very little energy. Wisdom comes from learning the difference. The same principle applies to arguments. Many people feel compelled to respond whenever they disagree with something. They believe every misunderstanding must be corrected and every opinion must be challenged. Yet experience teaches a different lesson. Not every argument deserves participation. Anyone who has spent time on social media has seen examples of people investing enormous amounts of energy into conflicts that change nothing. Hours are spent defending positions, proving points, and trying to convince strangers who have no interest in changing their minds. Meanwhile, peace quietly disappears. Emotionally strong people recognize that the ability to engage is important, but the ability to disengage is equally important. They understand that choosing not to participate is sometimes a sign of strength rather than weakness. This idea becomes especially valuable in close relationships. Families, friendships, and romantic partnerships often involve moments of tension. People become stressed, frustrated, tired, and emotional. They occasionally say things they do not fully mean. If every comment receives an emotional reaction, relationships become exhausting. Healthy relationships require the ability to separate temporary emotions from deeper realities. A loved one having a difficult day is not necessarily a reflection of your worth. A disagreement is not automatically a threat to the relationship. A critical remark does not always require a defensive response. This ability to maintain perspective acts as a form of emotional protection. In many ways, this is what emotional boundaries are really about. People often imagine boundaries as walls that keep others away. In reality, healthy boundaries are often internal rather than external. They involve deciding what deserves access to your attention, your energy, and your peace of mind. A person with strong emotional boundaries can listen without absorbing everything they hear. They can encounter negativity without becoming negative themselves. They can acknowledge another person's emotions without taking responsibility for managing them. This does not mean becoming cold, detached, or indifferent. It means remaining connected to others without losing connection to yourself. Think about the calmest people you know. Chances are they still encounter difficult individuals. They still face criticism. They still deal with disagreements and challenging personalities. The difference is that they do not allow every emotional storm around them to become an emotional storm within them. They understand something that many people spend years learning. Another person's behavior does not automatically require an emotional reaction. A rude comment does not require anger. A negative opinion does not require self-doubt. An invitation to conflict does not require participation. The ability to choose your response remains yours. This is one of the clearest signs of emotional maturity. It is relatively easy to remain calm around calm people. The greater challenge is remaining steady around individuals who are frustrated, reactive, critical, or chaotic. That is where emotional strength becomes visible. Not when circumstances are ideal, but when they are not. Not when everyone behaves reasonably, but when they do not. Not when life feels easy, but when it becomes complicated. The goal is not to avoid difficult people entirely. The goal is to learn how to engage with the world without allowing every difficult person to disturb your inner balance. Because peace becomes far easier to protect when you stop placing it in other people's hands. The moment their behavior no longer determines your emotional state is the moment you begin carrying your calmness with you wherever you go. Chapter 9. Training yourself before the storm arrives. Hours before a major competition, an athlete sits quietly in the locker room. The crowd has not arrived yet. The cameras are not rolling. The pressure-filled moments that spectators will remember have not happened. Yet the most important work is already behind them. For months they have followed a routine that few people ever see. They have trained when they felt motivated and when they did not. They have practiced the same skills repeatedly. They have prepared their body, studied their performance, and learned from mistakes. Long before the competition begins, confidence has already started taking shape. When the decisive moment finally arrives, the athlete does not suddenly become calm. The calmness comes from knowing they have prepared. The same principle appears in many professions where mistakes carry serious consequences. Pilots spend countless hours training for emergencies they hope never occur. Firefighters practice procedures until their responses become second nature. Musicians rehearse the same performance repeatedly before stepping onto a stage. Their confidence is not built during the critical moment itself. It is built during the months and years that come before it. Yet when it comes to emotional resilience, many people approach life differently. They wait for pressure to appear before thinking about how to handle it. They wait until stress arrives before trying to become calm. They wait until a crisis develops before focusing on their emotional well-being. As a result, they often find themselves trying to build stability at the exact moment they need stability the most. Life rarely works that way. The ability to remain steady under pressure is usually developed long before the pressure arrives. This helps explain why some people appear naturally calm in difficult situations. From the outside, it may seem as though they possess a personality trait that others lack. People often assume they were simply born more confident, more disciplined, or less affected by stress. The reality is usually far less mysterious. In many cases, calm people have spent years preparing themselves in ways that are not immediately visible. Their stability is often the result of habits, routines, and choices repeated consistently over time. Think about someone facing an important job interview. One person arrives after spending days preparing. They have researched the company, practiced their answers, and thought carefully about the conversation ahead. Another person arrives having done very little preparation. Both may feel nervous, but their experience of that nervousness will be very different. Preparation does not eliminate uncertainty, but it reduces unnecessary panic. The same principle applies far beyond interviews. A person who manages their finances responsibly experiences financial challenges differently than someone who has ignored them for years. A couple who consistently communicate and strengthen their relationship often navigate difficult periods more effectively than those who only address problems after they become serious. Someone who regularly takes care of their physical health enters stressful situations with more energy and resilience than someone who has neglected it entirely. Small daily actions rarely seem dramatic in the moment. Their impact becomes visible later. This is one of the most overlooked truths about personal growth. Major moments are often shaped by ordinary days. People tend to focus on the big events of life. They think about the presentation, the competition, the difficult conversation, the crisis, or the opportunity. What they often overlook is that performance in those moments is heavily influenced by what happened beforehand. A person's daily habits quietly shape their ability to respond when pressure appears. Sleep is a simple example. Most people have noticed that challenges feel larger when they are exhausted. Minor frustrations become major irritations. Small problems feel overwhelming. Clear thinking becomes more difficult. The situation itself has not changed, but the person's ability to handle it has. Exercise provides another example. Beyond physical benefits, regular movement often strengthens resilience, discipline, and mental endurance. It teaches people how to continue despite discomfort. It reminds them that progress frequently comes through consistency rather than intensity. People who regularly examine their choices, learn from experiences, and think honestly about their lives often develop greater self-awareness. When challenges appear, they are less surprised by their own reactions because they have already spent time understanding themselves. Even simple acts of personal discipline contribute to emotional stability. Keeping commitments, following through on responsibilities, and doing what needs to be done even when motivation is low, all help build trust in oneself. Over time, that trust becomes an important source of confidence. This kind of confidence is different from the confidence people often imagine. Many people think confidence comes from feeling certain. They believe confident individuals simply expect everything to work out. But genuine confidence is usually built on something much more practical. It comes from knowing you have prepared as well as possible. A student feels more confident before an exam when they have studied consistently. A speaker feels more confident before addressing an audience when they have practiced their message. A business owner feels more confident making decisions when they have invested time in learning and preparation. Confidence does not require guarantees. It often grows from effort. This is why preparation has such a powerful effect on calmness. When people know they have invested in themselves, they are less likely to panic when challenges arise. They may still experience fear, uncertainty, or stress, but those feelings are balanced by a deeper sense of readiness. The opposite is also true. When preparation is absent, uncertainty becomes more intimidating. Small obstacles feel larger because there is less internal stability to rely on. Panic often thrives in situations where preparation has been neglected. None of this means life can be controlled completely. Unexpected events will still occur. Difficult people will still appear. Setbacks will still happen. No amount of preparation can eliminate uncertainty from the human experience. What preparation can do is change the way we meet uncertainty. Instead of feeling helpless, we feel capable. Instead of feeling unprepared, we feel ready. Instead of relying entirely on luck, we rely on the work we have already done. Perhaps this is why the calmest people are often not the most naturally gifted. They are the people who have quietly invested in themselves long before anyone noticed. They have built habits that support them. They have developed routines that strengthen them. They have practiced discipline during ordinary days so they can draw upon it during extraordinary ones. When viewed this way, preparation becomes more than a strategy. It becomes an act of self-respect. It is a way of caring for the future version of yourself who will one day face challenges you cannot yet predict. The storms of life rarely announce their arrival. Opportunities appear unexpectedly. Difficulties emerge without warning. Pressure arrives on its own schedule. The question is not whether those moments will come. The question is who you will be when they do. Because calmness is rarely built during the storm itself. More often, it is built quietly, patiently, and consistently during the calm moments before the storm ever arrives. Chapter 10. How high performers think under pressure. A surgeon stands in the middle of a complex operation. The procedure has taken an unexpected turn. A complication has appeared, and several people in the operating room immediately recognize the seriousness of the situation. The stakes could not be higher. Every decision matters. Every action carries consequences. Despite the pressure, the surgeon does not panic. This does not mean fear is absent. It does not mean uncertainty disappears. The surgeon understands the risks better than anyone else in the room. Yet instead of becoming overwhelmed by everything that could go wrong, attention narrows toward what needs to happen next. One decision, one action, one step at a time. From the outside, moments like these can seem almost mysterious. We watch elite athletes perform in championship games, business leaders navigate crises, pilots manage emergencies, and experienced professionals handle situations that would overwhelm most people. Their composure often appears extraordinary. What is easy to miss is that these individuals experience pressure just like everyone else. Their hearts race, their minds recognize the risks. They feel uncertainty, responsibility, and stress. The difference is not that they are immune to pressure. The difference is how they think while pressure is present. This distinction is important because it changes the way we understand high performance. Many people assume exceptional performers possess unusual confidence or natural fearlessness. They imagine these individuals were somehow born with qualities that make difficult situations easier for them. In reality, high performers are often ordinary people who have developed specific mental habits through years of experience, practice, and discipline. One of the most important habits is focusing on what they can control. When pressure rises, the mind naturally wants to focus on everything that could go wrong. It starts imagining worst-case scenarios, predicting future problems, and worrying about outcomes that have not yet happened. While this reaction is understandable, it rarely improves performance. High performers learn to direct their attention elsewhere. An athlete taking a critical shot in the final seconds of a game cannot control the crowd, the score, or what already happened earlier in the competition. A business leader navigating a difficult market cannot control every economic condition. A pilot facing unexpected turbulence cannot control the weather. What they can control is their next decision. Their attention returns repeatedly to the same question: what can I do right now? This simple shift changes everything. While others become consumed by circumstances beyond their influence, high performers focus their energy where it can actually make a difference. They understand that attention is a limited resource. Every minute spent worrying about what cannot be controlled is a minute that cannot be spent solving the problem in front of them. Another habit that separates high performers is their ability to remain present. Pressure often pulls the mind into the future. A person giving an important presentation begins worrying about how the audience will react. Someone facing a difficult conversation starts imagining every possible outcome. An employee preparing for a performance review begins predicting consequences that may never occur. The mind races ahead while the present moment is forgotten. High performers train themselves to return their attention to what is happening now. This does not mean they ignore the future. It means they refuse to become trapped by it. They understand that future outcomes are influenced by present actions. The most effective way to handle tomorrow is often to focus completely on today's next step. Consider a marathon runner approaching the final miles of a race. If they become overwhelmed by the entire distance remaining, their motivation may disappear. Instead, experienced runners often narrow their focus. They concentrate on the next mile, the next turn, or even the next few minutes. By reducing the scope of their attention, they increase their ability to perform. This principle extends far beyond sports. Someone facing financial difficulties may feel overwhelmed by everything that needs to be fixed. A person rebuilding after a setback may struggle with the size of the challenge ahead. Yet progress often begins when attention shifts away from the entire mountain and toward the next step. High performers also have a tendency to simplify situations rather than complicate them. Under pressure, the human mind often creates unnecessary complexity. Problems become larger, risks become more dramatic, possibilities multiply until clear thinking becomes difficult. Exceptional performers move in the opposite direction. They break situations into manageable pieces. They separate facts from assumptions. They identify what matters most and focus on it. A military leader making a critical decision cannot analyze every possible outcome forever. At some point, they must identify the most important information and act. A physician treating a patient cannot become distracted by every theoretical possibility. Attention must remain on the facts that matter right now. Another common trait among high performers is their relationship with problems. Most people focus on the problem itself. They replay it, analyze it, complain about it, and become emotionally attached to it. While understanding a problem is necessary, becoming trapped inside it is not helpful. High performers spend less time asking, "Why is this happening?" and more time asking, "What do I do next?" Their attention naturally shifts towards solutions. This does not mean they ignore reality or pretend challenges do not exist. They simply understand that progress is found in action, not endless rumination. What makes these habits so encouraging is that they are not reserved for elite athletes, world-class surgeons, or successful executives. The same principles apply to everyday life. A difficult conversation becomes easier when you focus on what you can control rather than how the other person might respond. A career challenge becomes more manageable when you focus on the next productive step instead of worrying endlessly about the future. A personal setback becomes less overwhelming when you concentrate on solutions rather than replaying the problem. The situations may be different, but the mental habits remain remarkably similar. This is why exceptional performance under pressure should not be viewed as a gift possessed by a fortunate few. It is far more practical than that. It is the result of habits that can be developed, strengthened, and repeated over time. The people we admire most under pressure are rarely relying on inspiration in those moments. They are relying on ways of thinking they have practiced repeatedly until they became natural. When pressure arrives, they do not suddenly become different people. They become more of who they have already trained themselves to be, and perhaps that is the most important lesson of all. Pressure does not create greatness. It does not magically produce courage, discipline, focus, or resilience. Instead, pressure reveals what has already been built beneath the surface. When the moment of testing arrives, we do not rise to the level of our hopes. More often, we respond according to the habits, mindset, and preparation we have developed long before the pressure appeared. In that sense, pressure is not the creator of character. It is the mirror that reveals it. Chapter 11. Becoming someone life cannot easily shake. A few years earlier, the setback would have felt devastating. The phone call came unexpectedly on an ordinary afternoon. After weeks of waiting, hoping and planning, the answer was no. An opportunity that seemed promising had disappeared. For a few moments, disappointment took over. Questions appeared immediately. What went wrong? Was all the effort wasted? What happens now? The situation was painful, and there was no pretending otherwise. Yet something was different this time. The disappointment was real, but it did not consume everything around it. The setback did not ruin the entire week. It did not create a crisis of confidence. It did not convince this person that the future was doomed. Instead, after the initial frustration settled, life continued. There was reflection, there was learning, and eventually there was movement forward. The circumstances were difficult, but the person facing those circumstances had changed. That difference points to one of the most important truths about growth. The greatest transformation in life is rarely a change in circumstances. It is a change in the person who faces those circumstances. Many people spend years trying to create a life that contains no uncertainty, no conflict, no disappointment, and no stress. They imagine that confidence will arrive when everything finally becomes stable. They tell themselves that happiness is waiting on the other side of a perfect set of circumstances. If they can earn enough money, find the right opportunity, avoid mistakes, solve every problem, and keep life running smoothly, then they will finally feel secure. Yet life has a way of challenging that belief. No matter how successful a person becomes, new responsibilities appear, new uncertainties emerge, new obstacles arrive. There is always another decision to make, another challenge to navigate, another unexpected event waiting around the corner. The search for a problem-free life often becomes exhausting because such a life does not exist. Real confidence is not created by eliminating every challenge. Real confidence comes from knowing that challenges can be handled when they appear. They believe confident people are those who always know what will happen next. In reality, some of the most confident individuals are operating in situations filled with uncertainty. What separates them is not certainty about the future. It is trust in themselves. Fragile confidence depends heavily on circumstances. It feels strong when everything is going well. It grows when people receive praise, achieve goals, and experience success. But when criticism appears, when plans fail, or when setbacks occur, that confidence begins to weaken. Because it was built on external conditions, it becomes vulnerable whenever those conditions change. Genuine confidence is different. It does not disappear the moment life becomes difficult. It comes from experience. It comes from discovering, again and again, that you are capable of handling situations that once seemed impossible. Think about someone who has recovered from a financial setback. At one point, they may have believed losing income would destroy their sense of stability. Yet they adapted, they learned, they rebuilt. The experience was difficult, but it revealed something important. They were stronger than they thought. Consider someone who has gone through heartbreak. During the worst moments, they may have felt convinced they would never recover. Yet time passed, lessons were learned, and life continued. The pain was real, but so was the resilience. Every person who has faced adversity and emerged on the other side carries evidence of their own strength, whether they realize it or not. The challenge is that these strengths often remain invisible until circumstances demand them. Patience rarely develops during periods of comfort. It develops while waiting for answers that take longer than expected. Emotional maturity rarely grows when everything is easy. It develops during misunderstandings, disappointments, and difficult conversations. Resilience is not built when life follows the plan perfectly. It is built when the plan falls apart, and a new path must be created. Self-trust grows in much the same way. It develops when people repeatedly discover that they can survive situations they once feared. Every challenge faced successfully becomes evidence. Every obstacle overcome becomes proof. Over time, these experiences begin creating a deeper foundation inside a person. One of the most remarkable things about life is that difficult situations often reveal qualities that were already present but had never been tested. A person may not realize how patient they are until they face a long period of uncertainty. They may not recognize their courage until they must act despite fear. They may not discover their resilience until they experience failure. The strength was not created in that moment. The challenge simply revealed it. This is why growth often feels uncomfortable. It requires people to encounter situations that expose both weaknesses and strengths. The process is rarely enjoyable while it is happening, but it often produces qualities that cannot be developed any other way. Becoming someone life cannot easily shake does not mean becoming emotionless. It does not mean never feeling fear, frustration, sadness, or disappointment. In fact, emotionally strong people often feel those emotions deeply. The difference is that they no longer allow temporary emotions to determine the direction of their entire lives. A bad day remains a bad day rather than becoming a bad month. A setback remains a setback rather than becoming an identity. A difficult chapter remains a chapter rather than becoming the whole story. They have learned how to experience emotions without surrendering control to them. They have learned how to acknowledge discomfort without becoming trapped inside it. Over time, a subtle shift begins to occur. Instead of constantly asking how to avoid challenges, people begin asking how to become stronger. Instead of relying on perfect circumstances for peace of mind, they begin building qualities that travel with them wherever they go. Their confidence no longer depends entirely on outcomes. Their sense of stability no longer depends entirely on external conditions. They begin trusting themselves more than they trust circumstances. This trust becomes one of the most valuable forms of strength a person can possess, because circumstances will always change. Success and failure will come and go. Opportunities will appear and disappear. People will disappoint us. Plans will occasionally fall apart. Yet the person we become remains with us through all of it. Perhaps that is the true goal of growth. Not to build a life where pressure never appears, but to become the kind of person who can face pressure without losing themselves. Not to eliminate uncertainty, but to develop the confidence to move forward despite it. Not to avoid every challenge, but to discover the strength that challenges reveal. In the end, true strength is not measured by how little pressure a person faces. It is measured by how they carry themselves when pressure arrives. The strongest people are not those who have lived the easiest lives. They are the ones who have faced difficulty, learned from it, grown through it, and emerged with a deeper trust in their own ability to handle whatever comes next. Chapter 12. The Calm Advantage for Life. One of the simplest truths about life is also one of the easiest to forget. Pressure never completely disappears. Every new stage of life brings new opportunities, but those opportunities arrive with responsibilities attached. A promotion creates new expectations. A relationship creates new commitments. A business creates new risks. Personal growth creates new challenges. Even the goals we eagerly pursue often introduce forms of pressure that did not exist before. Many people spend years believing that peace will arrive when they finally eliminate uncertainty from their lives. Yet life has a different lesson to teach. Uncertainty is not a temporary visitor. It is part of the journey. The challenge is not learning how to create a life with no pressure. The challenge is learning how to move through pressure with greater wisdom, clarity, and confidence. This realization changes the way a person sees almost everything. Instead of viewing challenges as evidence that something is wrong, they begin recognizing them as a normal part of growth. Instead of expecting life to become permanently comfortable, they begin understanding that meaningful goals, important relationships, and worthwhile opportunities will always involve a degree of uncertainty. The difference is that uncertainty no longer feels like an enemy. It becomes something that can be navigated rather than feared. Over time, calmness begins to take on a different meaning. Many people initially think of calmness as a feeling. They imagine it as a state of complete peace where stress disappears, emotions remain perfectly balanced, and nothing unexpected ever disturbs their inner world. Real life rarely works that way. Even the calmest people experience frustration, disappointment, anxiety, and uncertainty. They have difficult days. They make mistakes. They encounter setbacks. What separates them is not the absence of challenges, but the way they relate to those challenges. Calmness is not a destination that someone reaches once and keeps forever. It is a practice. It is something that must be renewed repeatedly through awareness, habits, and daily choices. Every day presents opportunities to react impulsively or respond thoughtfully. Every challenge offers a chance to become overwhelmed or remain grounded. Every setback creates a choice between becoming discouraged and continuing forward. Calmness grows through these small moments. It is built gradually, often in ways that are almost invisible at the time. This is why calmness eventually becomes more than a technique. It becomes a lifestyle. It begins influencing the way a person approaches the world. When difficulties arise, calm people do not assume disaster. When uncertainty enters a situation, they do not immediately imagine the worst possible outcome. Instead, they create space between events and reactions. They focus on what can be controlled, rather than becoming consumed by what cannot. They allow emotions to inform them, without allowing emotions to rule them. One of the most valuable aspects of this mindset is that it applies to every area of life. In relationships, calmness creates better communication. People listen more carefully, react less impulsively, and become less likely to turn temporary disagreements into lasting conflicts. At work, calmness improves decision-making because attention remains focused on solutions rather than panic. In leadership, calmness inspires trust because people naturally look for stability during uncertain times. In personal growth, calmness creates consistency because progress becomes less dependent on mood and more dependent on intention. Even happiness is affected by this way of thinking. Many people believe happiness comes primarily from achieving certain outcomes. They imagine that peace of mind is waiting on the other side of success, recognition, wealth, or accomplishment. Yet experience often reveals something different. Lasting happiness is influenced less by what happens and more by how we respond to what happens. Two people can experience similar circumstances and have entirely different levels of well-being because they approach those circumstances differently. This is where the true calm advantage begins to emerge. It is not an advantage because it eliminates problems, it is an advantage because it changes the way problems are handled. It allows people to think more clearly when others are overwhelmed. It helps them recover more quickly when setbacks occur. It enables them to maintain perspective when emotions run high. Over months and years, these differences accumulate. Small decisions create larger outcomes. Consistent responses create stronger character. Calmness quietly influences the direction of an entire life. Perhaps the simplest philosophy to carry forward is this: focus on your response. Circumstances will always change. Some opportunities will succeed while others will fail. Some people will support you while others will criticize you. Some days will unfold according to plan while others will not. Trying to control every external condition is an impossible task. Focusing on your response, however, remains within your reach. The ability to pause, think clearly, adapt and move forward is available in every situation. When people begin living according to this principle, something remarkable happens. They stop spending so much energy fighting reality. They stop demanding certainty from an uncertain world. They stop expecting life to remove every obstacle before they feel ready to move forward. Instead, they begin trusting themselves. They develop confidence not because they believe everything will go perfectly, but because they know they can handle imperfection when it arrives. If you compare the person who started this journey with the person who stands here now, an important shift has taken place. The goal is no longer to avoid pressure. The goal is to become stronger within it. The goal is no longer to eliminate difficult emotions. The goal is to understand them without being controlled by them. The goal is no longer to create a life without storms. The goal is to become someone who can navigate storms with greater stability and self-trust. That transformation may not happen all at once. It unfolds through choices, experiences, and lessons gathered over time. Yet every step matters. Every moment of awareness matters. Every decision to remain steady when it would be easier to react matters. These moments gradually shape the person you become. In the end, calmness is not about avoiding life's challenges, escaping uncertainty, or protecting yourself from every difficult experience. Life will continue to bring change, pressure, setbacks, opportunities, and surprises. The calm advantage comes from knowing that whatever arrives, you are capable of meeting it with a clearer mind and a steadier heart. Calmness is not about avoiding life's storms. It is about becoming the kind of person who can walk through them with confidence, clarity, and strength. Conclusion. If there is one truth that life teaches again and again, it is that pressure is not something we eventually outgrow. Every meaningful chapter brings new responsibilities, new decisions, new uncertainties, and new demands. The student faces pressure before graduation. The professional faces pressure while building a career. Parents face pressure while raising a family. Leaders face pressure while guiding others. Even the goals we pursue for happiness and fulfillment bring challenges of their own. For much of our lives, we are tempted to believe that peace exists somewhere in the future, waiting for us after the next achievement, the next solution, or the next milestone. Yet the deeper lesson is that peace does not come from creating a life without pressure. It comes from developing the ability to remain steady within it. Throughout this journey, the most important change was never about circumstances. Circumstances will continue to change. Success will come and go. Plans will occasionally fail. Unexpected problems will appear. People will disappoint us. Life will continue to be unpredictable because that is the nature of life itself. The real transformation happens when we stop measuring our strength by what happens around us and begin measuring it by how we respond to what happens around us. Calmness is not a gift reserved for a fortunate few. It is not a personality type. It is not something that belongs only to naturally confident people. It is a skill that can be practiced, a mindset that can be strengthened, and a way of moving through life that becomes more powerful with time. Every challenge offers an opportunity to develop it. Every setback offers an opportunity to deepen it. Every moment of uncertainty offers an opportunity to trust yourself a little more than before. As you move forward, there will still be difficult days. There will still be moments when fear, frustration, disappointment, or doubt appear. But those moments no longer need to control the direction of your life. The greatest advantage you can carry into the future is not the belief that nothing will go wrong. It is the confidence that whatever happens, you can meet it with clarity, patience, and strength. Life will continue to test you. Pressure will continue to appear. But when calmness becomes part of who you are, challenges stop being things that define you and start becoming things that develop you. That is the calm advantage.